Dear painters and friends, in today's video we will finish the pedestal for the night. We will become gardeners. We will not enjoy painting much because I will mostly work with artificial vegetation. I will start with the lime bean plant. I realize that these plants were not very often seen in the castles, certainly not from the outside of the castle, which could have served as a ladder to overcome in castle. On the other hand, I think that they could have had some decorative plants in the castle, because the castle is really cold place and a little color would definitely have contributed to a better mood in the castle. I choose a red plant because the rest of the plants will be green and I wanted to have more than one color in the plants. It is a specific fabric with leaves glued to it and the appearance is a little satin. It tears badly in the smaller pieces, so I use scissors and cut off a few tendrils. I play with the tendril for a while and try to attach it to the column by the stairs. I would like to have a stone coat of arms overgrown with plants, but I will see how it works. I only use dispersion glue to glue the tendril. I find out where the tendril will touch the wall and apply glue to those places. Then I press the tendril against the wall and hold it for a while. Sometimes I have to adjust the tendril and add glue to other places, but it goes quite quickly. I apply the glue with a toothpick. I put the tendril together to create a growing, climbing plant, where the wall of the railing serves as a support point for the plant. The plant wraps around the railing. In the end, I didn't overdo it and only made a smaller plant so that the coat of arms was visible. I don't throw away the remaining tendrils and fallen leaves yet. They will come in handy later. And then I start planting grass, specifically tufts of grass. When buying tufts of grass, we receive a sheet on which these tufts are gently glued. They must be removed with tweezers and pulled a little. On the same sheet there are also very small tufts of grass which would be invisible on a large scale. In our case, they will serve very well. The tuft is small, but at the same time quite visible for our needs. I think that large tufts would be a sign of poor castle maintenance. I remove each small tuft from the supporting sheet with tweezers, apply glue from below and glue it to the base. I tried to glue the tufts into the gaps between the stones. There is a clay there where the grass could grow. The next step will be fallen leaves. Leaves from trees are found almost everywhere. All you need is a deciduous tree nearby, and the wind will take care of blowing the leaves in all possible directions. That is why I decided to scatter a few fallen leaves on my base. All you really need is a few leaves and dispersion glue. A few leaves in different corners and a few are in the space so that they are visible. And here I return to the limbing plant. While working with this plant, a few leaves fell off, and now I can use them just like leaves from the deciduous tree. Stick them on the ground of the limbing plant's backs. I use them to color the stone path a little. Most of the leaves in the back are straight, so I use my fingers and the end of the brush to bend some of the leaves to make the view more natural. I put the leaf on the end of my finger and press the end of the brush into the leaf. I press the leaf into my finger and it naturally bends and, importantly, it usually stays that way. It doesn't return to its original shape. I have the nature ready. It's time for fun. Make a flag. I start with a wooden pool. I choose a wooden toothpick that fits my needs in terms of size. It just needs to be adjusted at both ends. I sand one end so that it fits into the holder on the wall. In my glass bowl there are various wires, pieces of sheet metal, paper clips and wooden blocks. I also put balls there made from the rest of the putty when I have some left over and don't know what to do with them. There are quite a few of these balls and they are of different sizes. I will use one of these balls for the other end of the pole. I drill a hole in the wall, adjust the end of the toothpick a little and glue everything together. The basic shape of the pool is done. Now I have to think of a transition between the wall at the end and the wooden pool. Finally, I choose rings that would nicely complement and decorate the pool. First, I choose the thickness of the wire and wound it on the toothpick. I created several regular rings, which now have to be separated from each other. I use pliers to do this and cut the created spiral in one place. The rings fall to the ground. All I have to do is straighten each created rings and put both ends together. I have regular rings that are exactly the size of my pool. Now all I have to do is slide the rings onto the pole and glue them on. In the end, I decided on only 2 rings. I think it looks good this way. And now the more cheerful part of the flag, the hanging fabric itself. I found a very soft piece of sheet metal and drew a shape for the flag, which I cut out with scissors. I glued the flag to the pool and kept thinking about how I was going to shape the hanging flag. Now I just need to mark the rivets that hold the flag to the pool with a needle, and I can start shaping. But how? I choose a very soft sheet metal, so it was easy to work with, but I kept struggling and thinking about how to shape the hanging flag so it looks nature. It was a constant trial and error, straightening the flag and starting over. You have an idea in your head of what it should look like, but I couldn't even get closer to my idea. In the end, I chose the easiest way. I found a picture where the flag was in a very similar position. The pool was tilted about a 45-degree angle and the hanging flag. And I tried to achieve the look on my flag as well. I started shaping and rolling the flag using a toothpick. I kept putting the flag in the position it would be mounted on the wall, checking everything. I was finally moving somewhere. It was finally starting to take on the shape of a hanging flag. It is a piece of fabric that hangs down freely. No wind is blowing, so the fabric is not moving. It just hangs down. I had no idea how difficult it was. Thanks to the template, the difficulty can be elevated, and with a little delicate work and, most importantly, a lot of patience, an acceptable result can be achieved. I think I finally succeeded in making the flag. It hangs down freely and it is nature. Unfortunately, I did not figure out how to preserve the shape of the fabric. I was afraid that I would ruin the flag during the painting. No varnishes or dispersion adhesives added that the paint helped. After it dried, the flag was still very fragile. I told myself that I would have to manage it somehow and started painting. First a grey primer and then a white-blue pre-shading. The blue color is very contrasting and covers another color well. That's why I started working on the white color first. I choose to work with an airbrush. I applied the light grey color from the bottom up. Then I applied the white color from the top down. That's how I had the white part of the flag finished. For the blue color, I choose 2 shades of blue and the brush. I started painting one half of the flag with blue. I try to keep the light blue color in places where more light falls. I also try not to damage the already painted white half of the flag. To lighten the blue, I used light gray. The 2 basic colors are already on the flag and now I need to give in the necessary patina. The flag is in the sun, wind, rain and snow all day and its appearance depends on it. I don't plan on making the flag significantly dirty, torn, etc., just making a soft patina and muting the colors. That's why I choose brown and black wash, which is a very thin paint. I mixed these two colors and diluted them even more. Using an airbrush, I started applying this dirty water to the flag. The flag began to look worn and slightly dusty. When the fabric was ready, all that was left was to paint the pool, which was supposed to be a piece of wood. That's why I chose a light cream color as a base. One layer was enough. I prepared all paint, in this case Umber Nature and linseed oil, so that the paint would spread well. I diluted the paint and started to tear it across the surface of the pool with the brush. The paint on the surface creates irregular lines that give the impression of wood. In combination with the thin layer of primer and the chosen color, everything dries by the next day. To be safe, I waited 2 days. I was sure that everything would be dry and I would be able to stick the label in the designed place. The base is finished. I think by adding plants, I made a cold castle less cold, and the plants added more color between the shades of gray. I also like the flag I choose because it nicely fills the third dimension above the stairs and the space is not so flat. And it's time to get to the night. Thank you so much for your patience and support. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you soon.